place those. So with that in mind, let's just take a look at a typical grid. Grids in the platform are simply a way to display a collection of data, something that's associated. In this case, it's properties. We have buttons to create new records. We have buttons to select and delete existing records, and we can open a record and, in some scopes, multiple records and edit them at one time. Virtually every single collection of data, we have the ability to import from a tab delimited file. We have the ability to export to Excel in its entirety. And this list view and grid view, those are just different, literally just different variations of the data. One far more mobile, phone, tablet kind of friendly, and one, very traditional kind of Excel spreadsheet types of grids. You have up in this upper right-hand corner, there's a button in the platform that allows a user to say, hey, I don't care if I'm on a big device, I don't care if I'm on a small device, this is how I want to see it. So you basically are going to pick computer or mobile, and when you pick mobile, we go to that list view, but you're always going to have the option on certain areas to say, geez, I want to look at this in a grid or whatever it may be. So those are your two kind of viewing options, if you will, and we use a little intelligence when we initially open it up, but the user can change that and set it across the application. One of the key set of tools is this little triangle in the left-hand corner. That's filtering. Those are showing additional tool sets that are available to you in the grid. And what are those additional tool sets? For all intents and purposes, there's two primary things. One is what we call a grid view, which is what columns are visible, how wide are those columns, and in what order are they placed. Because a user at any time can just start dragging and dropping columns and reorder them in any way they want. They can click any column, get a column list, and start hiding stuff if they don't need it or don't want to see it. And then they can come over here and manage the view and create a new view, call it My View, and even set it as the default. So every time they come in, that's what they're going to see. I'm going to cancel this because I really don't need to do it, but that's how you would make one. And then you have essentially on most grids 5 filters, virtually every grid 5 filters that you can work at any one given time. However, every single column in the grid is available to you to filter on. All you have to do is pick it, and that's what you're going to see. Some of these columns, and actually let me go to buildings because it's easier to demonstrate this here. Some of these columns will show up as drop-downs. So if I go to property, which has a fixed, relatively finite set of data, it'll appear as a drop-down so that, hey, these are fixed values, they're always there, I can pick them. In other cases, like name, where it could be anything, it's going to require that you actually start typing. So let me do 101, Brody. It'll start filtering down that list. Now, the values that show up in these filters are only the values that are available in that collection. So if I were filtering on a category, class, or subclass for spaces, for example, I might have 100 different categories, but maybe I'm only using 3 of those values. So those are the only 3 values that are actually going to show up here, because if I filter on something that doesn't exist in the grid, I'm going to return 0 records. So we're just kind of narrowing that down for people. So there's just kind of a quick little walkthrough on grids here. First of all, and I actually don't have a site plan. We're going to look at some site plans later. But in this drawing example, we're not limited to floor plans. Most of the competition is limited to floor plans. Some of them have recently moved to allowing site plans, and I would suggest a lot of that is after coming up against Evolve in the marketplace. But we're not even limited to that. We can do elevations. This is actually a CAD drawing of an elevation of a library. We can do perspectives in our drawing viewer. This is actually an image. I don't have anything selectable in here yet, but we can make anything and everything selectable. I'll show you some examples of that in a moment. So elevation plans, whether they're drawings or images, perspectives, whether they're drawings or images, and then traditional floor plans as well. So in this example that I'm going to show you, I took exactly the same drawing. It was originally built in Revit, 3D building information model. I'll put a DWF folder, so let's go, I'll put a DWF file, and then brought it into Evolve. And this is how it looks, and this is how it functions. In Revit, I have the ability to export a floor plan to AutoCAD. I exported the floor plan to AutoCAD, did the FM Power Tools in there, and then brought it into Evolve. And it works exactly the same way as the Revit drawing works. Then from Revit, I also have the ability to output as an image file. I output the same exact drawing as an image file, brought it into Evolve, and surprise, surprise, it works exactly the same way. So one of the major benefits we have, we're not limited to drawings alone. We are not limited to the inside of the building. We can do inside, we can do outside, we can do perspectives. We can do, as you'll see in a few minutes, something well beyond just site plans. And that can be done in either the drawing viewer or on point, quite frankly. What's the major difference between, I'm going to let Wes back in. What is the major difference between an image and a file from AutoCAD? I'll show you what the major difference is. I'm going to zoom in this window. This is an image. And you'll see that the geometry, when we zoom in, starts to break up. So in an image, the geometry is going to start to break up. That's a limitation of the geometry. But for all intents and purposes, we can work with an image exactly the same way as we can with a CAD file. The benefits of a CAD file or a Revit drawing, any DWF file, is that when we zoom in, that geometry doesn't break up because it's all vector geometry, and we can display it more effectively, more efficiently inside the application. So those are really the only two major differences. Question?
On the image file, are the spaces done with, how are you defining those in Drawing Composer?
Yeah, the spaces are done in Drawing Composer, and in this particular case, I did them, and I only did a couple. I'm going to finish this up at some other point. I just wanted to get them in. I did them with polylines. I can draw polylines or polygons inside a composer, but you can just as effectively, and we'll look at this in other segments as well, you can just as effectively plop icons in here. If all you're worried about is information about things, I can just drop an icon in each room, and it'll take me literally probably under 3 minutes to do that. To polyline or polygon this entire drawing in Composer, and I actually think maybe I didn't do it. Probably going to take me 15 to 20 minutes to polyline and connect all the data. But once I'm done, unless there's walls, windows, and doors changes. However, when you bring in an image, we do overlay the polygons and the icons from its previous version, so you can just come in and edit those few things that have changed, so you don't have to start from scratch all over again. So those are some of the things we can do here. Let me take you in, and we'll take a look at Sprawling Estates. And full disclosure, this is actually where I live, so you're actually going to get to see where I live, and I'm going to take you inside the inner sanctum. So in Sprawling Estates, there's a whole bunch of things I can do. I have a site plan layout so that I can basically click on any unit, get whatever information I want. Here's where I live. If you're ever in the area, feel free to park right in this parking area right here and knock on the door. Happy to see you. Let me put some other things on here, actually. And we're not limited to just, the house plans and whatever. I've dropped icons on here for detention ponds that we have. I plan on actually fully populating this to identify the lighting systems and the fire hydrants and catch basins and everything else. I'll flesh this right out. Benefit of that is you go into a condo community, now they have all of their information in one place that they can have, and once again with permissions, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later, There's just amazing things we can do as to limiting what people can and can't see, what they can and can't do in the application. But I can have all of my information in one place, including the ability to set up preventive maintenance plans, deferred maintenance. How do I manage the reserves account for my condo? What are those things going to be going for? You can do that in maintenance and set it up.
Has your condo community shown any interest in something like this?
I have not brought this to my condo community because I was a member of the board. Because I was a member of the board, I would not feel comfortable charging them anything. There's some issues around that, so I kind of left that there. But let's go one step deeper in here. So if I open up the record, here's the information about this thing. I can go to the pictures. Here's my front elevation. There's my floor plan. Add any pictures you want on here. So here, I'll take you into the inner sanctum. So 61 Brody Lane is my actual real address, kids. And I can go into the floor plan. This is what my unit looks like, and click on and get information just like we would anything else. But here's where we once again start to break with what other folks are, aren't, can, and can't do. I can go down into images, and I can start looking at 360 images. This isn't even an on point. This is just attached to the application. And because we have an engine that supports this, we can do 360 images of any location, multiple locations. And so this is actually my foyer. That is Command Central. That is where Evolve is, was, born, gets worked on every single waking minute of my life. So there's some pretty cool stuff we can do within that application. I'm going to take it one more place, and then we'll kind of open it up and let you guys drive. Well, actually, maybe two more places. So let me take you on point, and we'll look at a couple of things. One of the things I'm building out, we had a data center demo at one point in time. I don't even know where it is anymore, to be honest with you. But it's kind of drilling down property building floor into the server room. I can start clicking on the actual equipment and get information about it. But I can go deeper if I want to. So I can go right down into the server racks and right down into the individual components within a rack if I want to. And I don't know if it's this one or is it this one. It might be this one. So here I have some UPS systems, and we can, once again, we can actually go down, and this doesn't go very deep. Where is it? Dependents, not services. Yeah, this doesn't go very deep, but you can build it out even further, where it creates one-line drawings of the dependencies between the components in your IT system. So there's the UPS. It actually provides the power for these two server disk banks, and you can go right down to the routers, out to the data jacks, whatever you want to do, and it'll actually create the diagram for you there. So that's one thing. And then this is something Dusty was working on as a little experiment here. I took it one step further. I'm calling it Shady Hills. Any of those of you familiar with the military will know that this is actually Arlington Cemetery. But we can actually take a look at Arlington Cemetery, take a look at its different sections, click down into an individual section. We can look at that section. We can, if we want, click on the resting places individually, or we can jump right into a 360 view of that particular location and actually go out and find the resting place of an individual within the cemetery. So I thought including this in the demo was a great idea. Not that I suggest, nor do I discourage going after this type of application of the technology. But here, in summary of at least this part, here's what we have. We have a Swiss Army knife. We have a set of tools capable of managing just about any specific needs for managing the people, places, and things that make up the world around us. We're focused on facilities management right now, asset management right now. There may be other markets that there is a huge call for it, that, geez, this technology could really be a breakthrough for what they're doing. We are open to listening and hearing what markets we potentially could serve. If it's one or two customers, it's certainly not going to be worth the effort on our part to do some massive development, but to have a client or two applying the technology and a partner maybe helping them along the way, not a big deal. But if we find parts of the markets or new markets that, oh my God, this is the holy grail as far as they're concerned, we stand ready, willing, and able to build those markets where there is large opportunity, building solutions for them. One last thing I want to show you, and I'm going to do it at a very high level. We can actually spend at some point, if you want, a session exclusively on this and talk about all the nuances, is permissions. For those of you familiar with Evolve, you know that the permission levels are very deep. I create a functional group, and based on that functional group, I can go down and decide what modules that functional group has access to, not just the modules, but if the module contains grids, what buttons on the grids do they have access to? What can they do on a grid for assets, for example? So there's the buttons at the module level. I can go down to the individual grids, and I can decide what fields are available to that functional group in any grid in the system. I can go down to the dialogues, and on the dialogues, and we'll pick assets, I can do this as granular as I want or as high as I want. At the tool level, I can decide what tools that they have access to and can use. I can go and hide tabs, which, quite frankly, given the scope of what we're adding for spaces and assets, in many cases you're going to find clients that don't care about seeing the move management people, the space allocation people, don't care about PM schedules, don't care about materials, don't care about dependent spaces, don't care. There's a whole lot of things they won't care about. Turn them off. Make their life simple for them. But you have the ability to go right down the line and decide what tabs they can see. And on any of those tabs that have attributes, you can decide what fields they see. Should that field be hidden? Can that field be visible and read-only? And for your clients, you can pick what fields are required for them to create a new record should they have permissions to do so. So you can have asset ID and asset name if you want to make those a combination field, that combination of unique values becomes a unique identifier. You can do that because we now have a duplicates code. So if I put in asset ID being the only required field, I try to create a new record where that asset ID already exists in the database, it's going to tell me I can't do it. If I make a combination field, asset ID and asset name, I can use the same asset ID as many times as I want, as long as the asset name that I use along with it is different. So you have the ability to set that up in here. So there's quite a bit on permissions that we can get pretty granular as to what the people in a functional group can and can't see. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor and let you guys talk about anything you want to talk about.
Question, why is there dual assets under that? From a security standpoint, it showed assets twice.
Let me go take a look. Permissions. And we were in dialogues?
No, I think we were, there we go.
All right, I may actually have some. I know exactly why that is, and thank you. I have two asset dialogues. One is for OnPoint and one is for Evolve. I need to remove the OnPoint one from permissions altogether because OnPoint, when it's in a standalone environment, has a different dialogue. You'll see the same thing for space as well.
Right.
So thank you for picking up on that.
No problem.
Can you explain the server message upper left? What does that mean?
Yeah, required settings will be applied across all functional groups. So this is the one thing that is universal. Is I cannot, let's go to assets, let's go to tabs, let's go to attributes. I cannot say that The administrative functional group, the only required field is asset ID, and the downline guys in the field group, it's asset ID and asset name. I cannot set different required fields for different functional groups. Required fields are universal across the database.